right, welcome to the Gulfport School District instructional videos for 8th grade science. I'm Miss Lee. Today we are going to talk about biodiversity. Now, I want you guys to remember that we have been talking about asexual and sexual reproduction, the transfer of genetic material or genetic information from parent to offspring. That hasn't gone away. Okay, so now we're going to be looking at L.8.2B, how environmental factors are going to influence the transfer of genetic information. But for you to understand that, we need to backtrack a little bit on how does biodiversity contribute to the sustainability of an ecosystem. So we need to know how biodiversity is keeping our ecosystem healthy, and then what happens if we have an unhealthy ecosystem, and how does that play a role in the transfer of genetic information. Okay, so we're going to first watch a video, and then we're going to take some notes, and then we're going to compare our classes to see which group would be considered more diverse based off of their hair color and their eye color. Okay, so we're looking at why is biodiversity so important.
Our planet's diverse, thriving ecosystems may seem like permanent fixtures, but they're actually vulnerable to collapse. Jungles can become deserts, and reefs can become lifeless rocks, even without cataclysmic events like volcanoes and asteroids. What makes one ecosystem strong and another weak in the face of change? The answer, to a large extent, is biodiversity. Biodiversity is built out of three intertwined features: ecosystem diversity, species diversity, and genetic diversity. The more intertwining there is between these features, the denser and more resilient the weave becomes. Take the Amazon rainforest, one of the most biodiverse regions on Earth, due to its complex ecosystems, huge mix of species, and the genetic variety within those species. Here are tangled liana vines, which crawl up from the forest floor to the canopy, intertwining with treetops and growing thick wooded stems that support these towering trees. Helped along by the vines, trees provide the seeds, fruits, and leaves to herbivores such as the tapir and the agouti, which disperse their seeds throughout the forest so they can grow. Leftovers are consumed by the millions of insects that decompose and recycle nutrients to create rich soil. The rainforest is a huge system filled with many smaller systems like this, each packed with interconnected species. Every link provides stability to the next, strengthening biodiversity's weave. That weave is further reinforced by the genetic diversity within individual species, which allows them to cope with changes. Species that lack genetic diversity due to isolation or low population numbers are much more vulnerable to fluctuations caused by climate change, disease, or habitat fragmentation. Whenever a species disappears because of its weakened gene pool, a knot is untied, and parts of the net disintegrate. So, what if we were to remove one species from the rainforest? Would the system fall apart? Probably not. The volume of species, their genetic diversity, and the complexity of the ecosystems form such rich biodiversity in this forest that one species gap in the weave won't cause it to unravel. The forest can stay resilient and recover from change. But that's not true in every case. In some environments, taking away just one important component can undermine the entire system. Take coral reefs, for instance. Many organisms in a reef are dependent on the coral. It provides key microhabitats, shelter, and breeding grounds for thousands of species of fish, crustaceans, and mollusks. Corals also form interdependent relationships with fungi and bacteria. The coral itself is a loom that allows the tangled net of biodiversity to be woven. That makes coral a keystone organism, one that many others depend on for their survival. So what happens when destructive fishing practices, pollution, and ocean acidification weaken coral or even kill it altogether? Exactly what you might think. The loss of this keystone species leaves its dependents at a loss too, threatening the entire fabric of the reef. Ecosystem, species, and genetic diversity together form the complex tangled weave of biodiversity that is vital for the survival of organisms on Earth. We humans are woven into this biodiversity too. When just a few strands are lost, our own well-being is threatened. Cut too many links, and we risk unraveling it all. What the future brings is unpredictable, but biodiversity can give us an insurance policy, Earth's own safety net, to safeguard our survival.
All right, so let's discuss some of the things that we heard in the video. So someone tell me, according to the video, what was biodiversity? Okay, Jamira, thanks. That you saying that biodiversity is a variety of species in one particular ecosystem, like the rainforest, right? So the rainforest has lots of different organisms or species in one localized ecosystem. Very good. What were some important factors that they said you had to have for a sustainable environment? Right, Alexis, they did say genetic diversity. So yes, genetic diversity is definitely one of the things that we had to have. What was something else that we had to have? Right, so we also had to have species diversity. Very good. Okay, so if one species went away, did it destroy the environment? Right, you guys are correct. No, it doesn't. Not if it was not a main thing, like in the situation with the coral. So they said that if the coral went away, then it caused lots of problems for the ecosystem. All right, so let's look at our information. So we have biodiversity, and biodiversity describes the variety of life across all levels of ecological organization. It includes genetic diversity that we just talked about, the species diversity, and it also includes ecosystem diversity. So what exactly is genetic diversity? So genetic diversity is going to be the variation in genes that exist within a species. And organisms with a large gene pool have a greater chance of surviving and flourishing than a population with limited genetic variability. So examples of that could be resistant to disease, or you can be more tolerant to the cold. Some organisms are more tolerant to the cold, like the Arctic fox can live in extreme cold temperatures. But a regular fox that we have in South Mississippi, if I put it in with the Arctic fox, the same environment, most likely not going to survive because it can't tolerate that type of coldness. Darwin termed this process natural selection, and we're going to learn a lot about natural selection and Darwin himself. All right, so let's take a quick action. Okay, so we just found out that the more genes in a pool we have, the better survival rates. Okay, so we're going to take a poll. So go into your little link that you have in your Google Classroom, click the poll, and let's look at the results from our class, and we're going to look at the results from another class, and we're going to compare them and see which one was most diverse or has the most diversity. All right, so looking at our class, we can see that we have, pretty interesting, 80% of us have brown eyes, and only 6.5% have blue eyes, and then we have 12 and 9/10% have hazel or green eyes. So, okay, most of us are brown eyed. We have natural hair color. We have a very small percent, 3.2%, that have blonde hair. We have nobody with red hair. We have a large group with brown hair and a large group of black hair. Okay, so this is our class period. So let's compare it to another class period. Okay, and so when we look at them, their graph looks completely different than our graph. You can see that they're all of them are in the 30% range for eye color. Their hair color is different. They have majority brown hair, but they have red hair. They have 3% with red hair. They have more blonde hair, but they have less black hair. So when we look at just eye color and hair color, when we look at that compared to our pie chart, and remember we said the larger the gene pool, the greater the diversity, greater chances of survival. Now this is just eye and hair color. So these aren't huge factors, but when we're just looking at eye and hair color and we're comparing the two classes, which class that has the most diversity? Okay, that's what we're looking at. Which one? Is it first period where they have this graph, or is it third period, which is our class, this graph? So which of the two have a higher diversity? Right, Jackson, right. First period has a higher diversity. And I like how you pointed out it's mainly because they have some individuals that have red hair. Very good. So y'all all understanding that. I'm super excited. Let's go back to our PowerPoint. All right, so we have species diversity. It's the number of species and abundance of each species that live in a particular location. The hottest spots for species diversity are close to the equator. So the tropical rainforests comprise only 7% of all land on Earth, yet are home to nearly 50% of all the species on Earth. So we're going to find a higher diversity close to the equator. But when I go to the tundra, the frozen land, I'm going to have less diversity for species. Ecological or ecosystem diversity, we have the variety of ways that species interact with each other and their environment. For example, we have coastal plains of the Gulf differ from the plains of Central America by the types of species found there, as well as the temperature and rainfall. So let's look at some benefits of biodiversity. It can boost ecosystem productivity. A large number of plant species means a greater variety of crops. That means we have more options of food. We have a healthy ecosystem can better withstand and recover from a variety of disasters. So when we have a hurricane, if our ecosystem is healthy and strong, then it can recover from the hurricane pretty quickly. But if it's not a healthy system, then we're going to have some major issues and it's going to take a long time for it to recover. Greater species diversity ensures natural sustainability for all life forms. So a healthy biodiversity provides a number of natural service benefits for everyone. So we're looking at protection of water resources, soil formation and protection, nutrient storage and recycling, pollution breakdown and absorption. So, if we have something that we're polluting the environment, we want to make sure that it can break down. Contribution to the climate stability, maintenance of an ecosystem. And a recovery from unpredictable events. So we have biological benefits. It provides food. So when our ecosystem is, stable, we get lots of food. That we can also use the resources to make medicine, some medicinal resources and pharmaceutical drugs. We can create wood products, ornamental plants, breeding stocks or population reservoirs, future resources, so it can provide resources for our future generations, a diversity in genes and species, and ecosystems. And there's some social benefits here. We research, provides education and monitoring. So we do a lot of research on our environment, which we learn a lot of things from. It also allows recreation and tourism and cultural values. Okay, so I want y'all to tell me, or describe how biodiversity contributes to the sustainability of an ecosystem. That's our exit ticket today.